Hello, my dear friends. It is 10 p.m. on a Thursday night, which means it's time for me to review the BMW i4 eDrive 35. This is the entry-level BMW i4, and it's a very exciting electric sedan. There's a lot to know about this vehicle, so I'll tell you all the cool features and some of my gripes. But before we start, I want to thank Turo for lending me this car for the entire week to test out and experience. So thank you very much. Now, this BMW i4 I'm reviewing is a 2023 model year, but it's very similar to the 2024. Now, the 2024 i4 starts at around $54,000, so this is definitely on the higher price point. The new Model 3 with destination fees is around $44,000, and you get the tax credit. No tax credit on this. This is pretty expensive. But you are paying a premium for this vehicle, and I have to admit, this thing is very well composed. This is actually one of the best driving electric sedans I think I've ever driven. I say this drives better than the Polestar 2, and I will go into that in a little bit. But overall, that's what you get. 256 miles of range, 70-ish kilowatt-hour capacity battery pack, and a price point of $54,000. Now, when you approach the vehicle at night, you have very nice lighted door handles. You have a lighting pattern presented down here. This is actually a mechanical door handle, but you have frameless windows. This is so nice. Frameless windows just give that vehicles a very premium feel. And the other cool thing is the door thud is very nice, especially for frameless door windows. Now, on the inside, you have these very big, crisp displays. And even when we go on here, press the home button, see, the display is very responsive. It's probably one of the best displays I've seen in a legacy automaker vehicle. Now, closing the door, nice thud. And you turn on the car by pressing the start-stop button here. Turns on, you have interesting noises, and that's the startup sequence. All BMW i4s come with a nice power sunroof that does open, which is an awesome feature because not many EVs have that. And this one comes with the ambient lighting package, which just gives this car a really cool vibe. Now, getting into the back seat, it is not too spacious back here. So I have my seat in my normal driving position, and I barely have any foot room. And it just seems a little cramped back here. And this is mainly thanks to the BMW i4 being on a shared internal combustion engine platform. So you have a transmission tunnel here, and you don't get this in a lot of EVs. So you get in Model 3, you get in a Chevy Bolt, you get in a BMW iX, even, yes, BMW's other car, and a BMW i3 too. You don't get this transmission hump. So this is a little disappointing. But you do get a nice center console back here with cup holders that are, of course, slightly over-engineered, but that's all right. And, you know, it's not a bad place to be in. It's just not super spacious. On the topic of space, one thing I adore about this vehicle is it's a liftback. Now, liftbacks do bring some caveats because one thing is there can be more interior noise, and I actually experience a lot of headline rattle in this vehicle. Now, granted, it has 25,000 miles, and it is a vehicle on Turo, so we can't expect it to be in the best of hands, but nevertheless, that was a little interesting for a pretty new BMW. But back space back here is pretty good. You got a little more under the floor where we keep the charging cables and these awesome little side cubbies, which are great for if you're carrying groceries and stuff. But overall, good interior space back here, and I love the fact that it's a lift back. Now, taking a look at the front trunk. Oh wait, there is no front trunk in the BMW i4. Yes, the BMW i3, which came out in 2014, has a front trunk, but not this. But wait, underneath this plastic cover is just a bunch of space. Look, I could probably put a small suitcase in there, like a carry-on for TSA compliance, that could fit in here. And this is actually insane that there's no plastic tray, because I feel like if some of these components were kind of pushed out of the way, find a way to make this a little more space efficient, there could be a pretty big storage area up front. So it's actually kind of sad to see that not in the BMW i4. But alas, you're probably not going to buy a BMW i4 so you can put your carry-on bag in the front trunk. You're going to buy this car because you want a great driving experience EV. And the BMW i4 drives phenomenally well. The BMW i4 just handles so well. So the steering feels a lot more natural than the Tesla Model 3. And the other thing too is this car weighs around 4,500 pounds, which is still a lot, but it manages that weight very well. The Polestar 2, which I just recently have been driving, does not handle the weight that well. That car just feels very hefty. This car feels very nimble, agile. Now, also, car makes 282 horsepower. So a lot of people who love power are like, okay, it doesn't make that much. Fair point. But with the handling and that this car allows for the traction to slip a little bit more, it's a much more fun experience than EVs that even make more horsepower. This car just feels more visceral than a lot of other cars on the market, and I really like it for that fact. And now it is time for the big question: charging and range. The base model BMW i4 can accept up to 180 kilowatts on a DC fast charger. That gives it a 10 to 80% time of around 31 minutes, which is pretty normal. This is in line with Polestar 2, Model 3, most normal EVs. It's not as good as like a Kia EV6, but it's not too bad either. I think it's more than doable. Now, range comes out to about 256 miles on the EPA cycle. I think if you drive like a normal human being, that is more than capable. With spirited driving, probably more like 220, and obviously highway will probably be around that level too. But BMWs have always had pretty reasonable range estimates in real-world testing, so I don't think range should be a massive issue. Now, if you want something with more range, you can get the eDrive 40, which actually has an EPA range of 318 miles, which is really impressive. Now, finally, one thing I don't really like about the BMW i4 is the fact that a lot of options cost a lot extra. And I mean pretty basic options too, like adaptive cruise control. You don't get that on the base model. You don't even get that on the M50 model. You still got to pay extra for it. You also don't get a premium sound system either. So if you want Harman Kardon, you got to spend about $875, which I think would be worth it in this circumstance because the base audio system is really not that great. And that's the one kind of unfortunate thing about legacy automaker vehicles like the BMW i4 is the user experience is really dependent on what options you spec on the vehicle. So that's a little unfortunate. Now, nevertheless, this is an exclusive vehicle, and I think buyers would be fine spending a few $1,000s extra to get the features they want. And overall, I think the i4 is a really impressive car. It's not for everyone, but for the enthusiasts, it might be worth a look. But before I end this video, I want to say one really good thing about this car, and this fact that the i4s actually have really good resale value. Even 2022 model year i4s, they're hard to find for under $35,000 used. You don't see that with a lot of other electric luxury cars too. Like the Mercedes EQE, you can get those for about half off, just 1 year old. That's insane. The i4 is holding on to its value pretty well. And I don't know what all the rationale is behind it. I know it is just a very good vehicle. It has conservative specs, it has good charging, etc. So I think the car is still a little on the high end, brand new, but for some reason, it's holding on to its value really well. And for that reason, I can actually feel like I can certainly recommend this vehicle to some people because you don't have that burden of insane depreciation, which happens to a lot of other EVs. So overall, I think if you're an enthusiast, you have extra money you want to spend on an interesting car, the i4, I can wholly recommend.